You are watching TFI.
So greetings, welcome to TFI, where we have a special series of videos coming up on the channel to promote Autodesk University Las Vegas 2019 and to commemorate Autodesk Inventor's 20-year anniversary. Autodesk are putting on a special class track this year with a series of top-notch Autodesk Inventor classes. We're going to be speaking with a few of the speakers that are hosting those classes this year, and we're going to start with Alessandro and Matt, who are hosting a class on generative design. So what we're going to be doing is making you aware of the class that they're hosting for a couple of reasons, mostly to see if you want to just tip your interest in attending their class, but also if you're not able to get to Autodesk University this year, then you can see the classes online on the Autodesk University website after the event. So keep your eyes peeled for that. So the class that we're looking at this year is IM320822-L is the code, but it's getting started with generative design for Inventor users, and the class is being held on Wednesday, November 20th. So it's the Wednesday, November 20th, 10:30 a.m. And before we get into some teasers about the class, let's probe the speakers just a little bit. So we're going to start with Alessandro, who is an adoption specialist for manufacturing cloud services. Hi, Alessandro. That's Alessandro in the bottom left-hand corner. Actually, you can see he's got a little name tag down there. Hello, Alessandro. So Alessandro has worked with Autodesk for over 17 years, I believe. And like I said, I was stalking your LinkedIn before, so I'm well primed with some prime beef. And he hails from Switzerland, so you know the class is going to be well punctual and on time. And Alessandro, what exactly is an adoption specialist? I assume Autodesk aren't in the business of matching babies to parents. So generally, what does an adoption specialist do within Autodesk?
Yeah, exactly. In general, when I introduce myself, then I have to translate my job title. Actually, an adoption specialist is someone who helps the customer that start using a product to be successful using this product as soon as possible. So we try to help them with the first project, filling up all the knowledge gap that they have. So, and basically that's it. And I've been done this for the last almost 18 years. And for the 80% of those 18 years for Inventor. Now I'm focusing a little bit more on Fusion 360, but mainly on the generative design module.
So how do you guys on the adoption team make contact with and touch base with clients? Because I imagine there's a lot of clients out there who don't know that Autodesk have this team. So how does that connection happen?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it happens in a few ways. One of the ways that we do that is from making large-scale content. So if you've seen some of the Fusion videos that our colleague Brad Tallis has created recently, that's a way to kind of reach the masses with what we're trying to do. With Ali and I, we're a little more focused on generative, so we focus on a smaller subset of customers, working very closely hand in hand with them. So it really matters on what the customer is working with and what they're trying to do. And since generative is new to the entire industry, there is much more of a need for that higher touch engagement.
So do you guys tend to reach out to customers more than they reach out to you? Do you tend to look for people that need help and then offer those services direct?
Yeah, I mean, as Matt was saying, for instance, for generative design is a very new product, it's a very new solution. So sometimes the customer try it out by themselves, and sometimes we receive some feedback that can be on a social media or on any other location. But I mean, that's not what I was expecting. But basically, because they don't know how to use it, there is no shame in that, because it's a very new solution. So we try to reach out and show them how to use the product, basically.
Yeah. Cool. All right, thanks. So then we also have up at the top left-hand corner, that's Matt Lemay, is that right?
Lemay, that's right.
Lemay.
That's right.
Super. So Matt, obviously, is also on the adoption team. You've been with Autodesk for almost 4 years, I believe?
Coming up on 4. That's
Coming
right.
up on 4 years and hails from Boston.
That's right. That's right. I'm not going to make a lot of friends with that, but that's all right.
I'm just perfect. I went on one of these YouTube bounces and I ended up, for some reason, I was going to try and do the Boston accent, which I only know from the TED movie.
I try to hide that in a more professional setting, so we'll try to keep that in for today.
Well, I ended up finding some YouTube video of this would-be actor trying to learn the Boston accent, and he ended up seeing this dialect coach, and it was like absolute rubbish content, but it was fascinating. 20 minutes of someone trying to be taught that, and anyway, that's besides the point. So you began life at Autodesk as a support specialist. Like, what I found is that quite a few people who've made their way up the tiers within Autodesk did start out at sort of the product specialist support levels, which is, I think that's a testament to Autodesk's willingness and keenness to promote internal development. So how did you ultimately make your way into generative internally within Autodesk?
Yeah, so the team that I worked with at first was the Enterprise Priority Support team. So that is a specific support tier that's provided to our customers that have that highest level. So it's the EBA customers, the Enterprise Agreement customers at that level. With that, my experience has always been additive manufacturing, composites in the aerospace industry, all these advanced manufacturing techniques, and that kind of feeds in perfectly to generative, right? So additive is very much a workflow that's involved within generative, and now generative is much more than that as well. So that was kind of the way that I first got into it, and now you can do generative with casting, with 2.5-axis subtractive, with much more traditional manufacturing, but that was the way that I got in.
So that, I guess, leads us on to the topic of generative, which depends, I guess, on which industry you're in, how involved you are with the social scene, and you get involved with what's going on, within the Autodesk space. And this, but a lot of people that I come across haven't heard of or are not aware of what generative is. So how would you guys define what generative design is to somebody who's maybe been using Inventor or Fusion for a couple of years, but just really never heard of it? They've got no concept of what that is. How would you describe it to them?
Yeah, so we'll see if our brand team has any issues with what we say here in the next couple seconds. But I think the easiest way to explain generative to a new user is it's a brand new way to look at the way that you bring products to market, right? So in the past, if you were to make a product, you'd start off with your own idea of what that product needs to be. You'd simulate it, you'd validate it, you'd go through the iterations, and you'd bring that product to market. Now with generative, the idea is we want to lead with really the objectives, right? So you're saying, rather than my thoughts on what this product needs to be, I'm saying I need a part that can hold 5,000 pounds. Maybe it's aluminum, titanium, and steel. Maybe I'd like to look at additive, subtractive, and casting. And then generative is going to provide you with hundreds of results that you wouldn't have thought of completely on your own, allowing you to make more informed trade-offs into all those different, all those different factors. Okay. So I'll hand that over to Ali as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I'm Italian, my original Italian. Leonardo da Vinci was saying that, a problem that has a solution is a problem that is well framed. I hope I have translated right from Italian.
Sounded good.
No, in the last centuries, we jumped since decades, hundreds of years, we jumped directly to the solution based on our experience. While with generative design, an engineer, a designer should focus in framing the problem correctly, and generative design will do the CAD work for him, So, this will enhance the capability of an engineer because he is supposed to be focused in framing correctly the problem that he needs to solve. And this is what generative design allows you to do.
So it's like a helping hand for engineers to take the burden off them a little bit and help them focus on other areas rather than solving problems that we've now got technology that can help them solve.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So has there been any particularly interesting or cool projects that you guys have worked with customers around generative design? Anything that you can mention and talk about?
Well, I think if you keep up with the news, I mean, you'll see projects like the Volkswagen generative project with Autodesk. You'll see things like NASA, JPL. They worked on a lander using generative. You see all these very organic, generative, kind of alien-looking forms. And the things that are most exciting for me, and really the most exciting for our customers, are when you can create a generative part that looks so real that someone wouldn't even think it's a generative part, right? So if you look at the 99% of people that are out there in the manufacturing industry, they don't have access to additive yet. They're looking at cost, and they're also looking at performance, but they're looking at cost a lot more than they're looking at performance. And as generative can allow them to make things that are CNC manufacturable, casting, even 2-axis cutting, that's where all of this value from generative leaves just that small research group. That's just a couple people making those moonshots, and it goes out to the entire industry.
Yeah. What's the what would you say are the biggest barriers for adopting generative that you've come across so far?
Well, there are a few. I mean, some customer they think that generative design is a bit expensive because I mean, for instance, for running a study, you need to spend approximately $25. For exporting a model that you want to produce is about $100. Sometimes you need to run more than one study, but at the end, let's say, they struggle to see the value. They don't understand that, for instance, in let's say 5-6 hours, they get a number of solutions that a team of engineers could have taken weeks for getting there, and they don't can. For some solution, for instance, the solution for additive, they cannot even get there because those shapes a human being cannot even conceive it. And how much it costs a team of engineers working for weeks for solving a problem. But this is especially when you work with small, medium company. This is one of the complaint until they see the value, I would say.
Is manufacturability an issue that's brought up on a regular basis? I've tried to promote it internally within my company a few times, and when you show people some of the designs that generative spat out, the first reaction I get from pretty much everybody is, how would you make that? So is that something that kind of puts people off even just giving it a go? Well,
it's something that's rapidly improving. Yeah. I mean, even if you look at 6 months ago, it was really just additive results that you could get out of generative. A couple months later, you could do CNC. So you're looking at 3 and 5 axis subtractive. Then casting came into play. And then recently we just released 2.5 axis subtractive, which takes what we did with 3 and 5 axis, but just makes it that much more, that much easier to actually machine that outcome. You know, I think really as you look at it, generative and additive is one of the main misconceptions that's really out there in the market. I think when someone hears generative, they think alien, they think organic, and they think additive. And what we really need to do is continue to promote the idea that generative and traditional manufacturing can actually relate to each other in a very effective way.
Awesome. So moving on to your class at Autodesk University. So it's getting started with generative design for Inventor users. So I assume there's going to be some kind of focus and emphasis on how to port data from Inventor over into generative. And I guess for the benefit of anyone watching this who's not familiar with the generative ecosystem, it is a module within Fusion 360. It did used to have its own standalone application, didn't it? But I think that was discontinued recently. So yeah, if you want to use generative with Inventor, you have to port it over at Diffusion. We'll not get into that too much because that's the foundation for your class. So we'll not talk too much about that now. But is there any other areas of working with Inventor and generative design that you'll be focusing on in your class, or is it mostly just that workflow to get the data in?
Maybe before answering to your question, as we were saying at the beginning, I've been working for maybe the 80% of my life in Autodesk, 18 years with Inventor User, and I still talk to a lot of them, and most of them, they see the value of generative design, but I'm talking to Inventor users that they use Inventor a little bit like me since release 1. The main misconception is that for leveraging generative design, they need to give up of Inventor, learn Fusion 360, and they don't want to do that. So they ask why I cannot have generative design in Inventor. So the main purpose of this class is to show that basically you can keep on using Inventor as your main design tool. And even doing that, you can take advantage of generative design without even learning Fusion 360 if you don't want to. Of course, you need to learn how to use the generative design module inside Fusion 360, but this is the main reason. So basically, in this class, we are going to show that, I mean, you do almost everything in Inventor, and you just do the basically the generative the workflow for setting up the study in generative, generating the outcomes, and then you go back to Inventor and you use the outcome as if it was an Inventor part. So really, this is the main purpose. You were saying, of course, the main target for this class are the collection customer. So you don't need to import anything, because with the AnyCAD functionalities, you can basically use the Inventor file in Fusion 360, and you can use the Fusion 360 file, basically the outcome, in Inventor without doing any translation. Of course, if you are not part of the collection and you use the standalone products, assuming that they still exist, the workflow, I mean, of course, change a little bit, but the concept remain. Sorry for being so long.
Sorry. So I guess the next question is, obviously generative design is exclusive to Fusion, as Ali's just iterated on. How do you guys feel about generative being exclusive to Fusion 360? Is it something that you think possibly in the future could be moved over to have a more accessible route within Inventor, maybe an integrated button within Inventor, or do you think it's something that should stay in Fusion and the workflow should be the same as it is moving forward?
Well, I can answer the first question. The second one is well above my pay grade. To the first question of how we feel, I think it really comes down to kind of this misconception that Inventor and Fusion can't be used together. And specifically as more manufacturing techniques are added to Fusion, as generative is continuously enhanced within Fusion, the ability to work between Inventor and Fusion is really going to be something that I think a lot more people will actually have to do. Right? If you looked at Inventor or Fusion a couple of years ago, if you're an Inventor user, you might not have really seen the need to do anything within Fusion because you had all the capability at that point that you needed with an Inventor. Since Fusion is a cloud-centric tool, and we're so focused on connecting things like generative and then all these new manufacturing strategies, you'll have a lot more people that can still contain their large assembly files within Inventor, still use Inventor as their CAD workhorse, and then kick over to Fusion if they need to do generative, or if they need to do advanced tool paths for CNC, or if they want to look at additive. So I think it's less so about where generative fits within products. It's more about people will use Inventor and Fusion together a lot more.
Okay, so you think that's definitely going to be a thing? You think the two products are going to coexist in the long term, but possibly separate a lot more? Is that something you see happening?
I mean, I think we're seeing more users of the two today than ever. And again, the reason for that really has to be with the manufacturing strategies that are added within Fusion. So even outside of generative, recently within Fusion, we released these manufacturing extensions, which take this very specialized, very high-skilled power mill subtractive manufacturing techniques, and it brings that into Fusion. And what that allows someone to do is, well, if they're working on their CAD files with an Inventor and they need to use something that would be highly specialized to actually mill that part, well, they can now actually use Fusion for that instead of having to go to power mill. So I think you'll see Fusion as continuously growing, especially within manufacturing and generative in that space. So it's just another tool that Inventor users can really just plug into.
Just to add a little bit on that, and of course, I cannot say if generative, I cannot answer to the second part of the question because I don't want to risk to say something that goes against what Derek or Steve said. But the majority today of our Inventor user, they use the collection, or if they are EBA customer, they use token flex stuff. So they can use Inventor and Fusion very well side by side. So I think this interoperability that is total with the AnyCAD functionality, I think it just add value to both products. Inventor for large assemblies. One of the main strengths of generative design is the power of cloud computing, and of course, Fusion was born for managing data on cloud. I know this is basically the political answer that Derek gave to you, but yeah.
So I guess that's pretty much coming to the end of the chat. Is there anything else that you guys enjoy doing over at Autodesk University? Obviously, it's coming up in a couple of months. Aside from the class that you're delivering, what else do you guys get up to when you're over at Autodesk University? Is it a busy time for you guys, or do you get time to wind down and relax and soak in Vegas?
I've been there, maybe it's my 10th Autodesk University this year. It's quite tiring, I would say.
So you're probably sick of the sight of Vegas by this point.
Yeah. To be honest. But yeah, I love I've been presenting classes since 2012, I believe, mostly Inventor tips and tricks classes if you Google my name. And I love to do that. I love to talk to customer. I love to do that. Las Vegas,
You take it or leave it. How about you, Matt?
Yeah.
What else do you get up to over at AU? Do you enjoy the sights of Vegas, or is it all business?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think the first time I went there, I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Maybe just for the first night or maybe the first day. And then the second day, I'm like, all right, I think we can head home now. This is fine. For me this year, so I'm a part of a total of 4 generative classes, and they're all about generative with traditional manufacturing. So I think for everyone out there that's like, hey, generative is too alien, it's too organic, we have this class, which is generative for Autodesk Inventor users. There's another class, which is generative for casting. We're going to be co-presenting with one of our customers, TB Woods, for that. We have a class with Made in Space. So for those that don't know Made in Space, they are really revolutionary company that's looking at space manufacturing. However, the things they're making with generative are really 2-axis cut plates, right? So it's the most super advanced kind of industry segment making generative 2-axis cut plates. So if they can do that, really anyone can do what they're showing with that as well. And then we have one other class of generative with additive at scale with Markforged. And for those that don't know Markforged, they're really trying to change the paradigm within metal additive manufacturing. Still, metal additive is one of those things, if you're making less than 50 extremely high performing expensive parts, maybe metal additive will work, but maybe not. And Markforged is really changing that, where they can now look at hundreds of parts to make that same trade-off. Those 4 are certainly the highlight. Looking forward to when we might go somewhere else other than Vegas, but I can't comment on that either. So that's it.
Can't imagine doing 4 classes. I was a speaker last year, and I must have put 3 months of work into the class. It was because I think it's probably because it was my first class, and I wanted to make it a really good one. But I couldn't have possibly imagined doing 4 classes. That's just an intolerable amount of preparation.
100% with you. Since 2012, I have always submitted 1 proposal. If it was in, fine. Otherwise, I could not have afford to do more than 1 because took me too much time. But Matt is a genius.
Well, I mean, you say that, but it makes it a lot easier when you're co-presenting with a customer who's much smarter than you, and you can still work with them on it, but they're really the ones that know what they're doing. So
Yeah, also with our class, since I'm doing all the work basically.
that's a small glimpse to see how things happen in the background here. That's it.
All right, guys. Anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you, Neil, for setting this up. I mean, it's really an honor for me being interviewed by you. And,
It's an honor for me to let you meet me. I heard that in a film once. I've wanted to use it for ages. Oh, well, thanks, guys. So your class is on Wednesday, November 20th, 10:30 a.m. It's Generative Design for Inventor Users. If you're attending Autodesk University, do feel free to register if there's still some spaces left. Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you very much, Matt, for your time. I look forward to meeting you guys over at Autodesk University in Vegas this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil.
Cheers.